Hello, I'm Bradley. A week after we split, my ex married the perfect guy. But when I saw his face, everything came rushing back. I remembered that night. The night I never thought would haunt me again. But the worst part? It wasn't just my ex. Someone in my family helped make this happen. They sold me out, manipulated everything, and took what was mine. The truth is darker than I could have ever imagined. Stay with me, because you won't believe who was behind it all. The house was too quiet. The kind of silence that creeps up on you after a long, loud storm, leaving only the ringing in your ears as a reminder of what's gone. I sat on the couch, staring at the empty space next to me where Isabelle used to sit. I could almost feel the warmth of her body, but it was just a memory now. A space that had once been filled with laughter and small moments of peace now felt suffocating. It had only been a week since the divorce was finalized, but in many ways it felt like it had been longer. Time had stopped making sense. I glanced at my phone, hoping to see a message from Isabelle. Something, anything, but there was nothing. No apology, no explanation, just silence. A few months ago, I would have texted her to check in, to see how she was doing, but now the thought of sending another message seemed pointless. She had moved on. And me? I was left with this empty house and an even emptier heart. I closed my eyes, trying to remember the days before everything fell apart, back when things were easier. When we were just two people in love, building a life together. But then everything started to slip away. I could feel it now, this low hum of confusion in my chest. What went wrong? What happened to the dreams we once shared? I reached for my laptop and opened the email Isabelle had sent. The words jumped out at me. I think it's time to separate. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, like a physical blow. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could hear her voice in my head, cold and detached. She hadn't even tried to make it work. She'd just walked away. There was nothing I could do now. She was gone. I could feel it in every inch of my body. All those years together, and she just walked away. The pain settled in deeper, like a weight pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The silence in the house was deafening, and all I could think about was how easily she had moved on. It felt like a betrayal, but I couldn't fully understand why. Was it because she'd left me? Or was it because, for the first time in a long time, I realized she had stopped loving me long before she told me? It didn't take long for the memories to flood back. I closed my eyes, and I was there again, standing at the altar, Isabelle in her wedding dress, smiling up at me like she would never leave. The sun streamed through the church windows, and everything felt right. I could still hear the soft murmur of our vows, the promises we made to each other. We were supposed to be forever, but then, slowly, things started to change. I began to notice the little things. Isabelle's complaints about my long hours at work, her growing disinterest in our marriage. I was too caught up in my career to notice. I was focused on climbing the ladder, chasing success. She used to tell me she was fine, but I think she stopped believing that herself. I remember one night, after another argument about how much time I was spending at work, she said, "You don't see me anymore. You don't see us anymore." I'd brushed it off at the time. I told her it was just a phase, that everything would be fine once I finished this project. But the truth was, it wasn't a phase, and deep down, I knew it. Looking back, I can see the warning signs now. The way she started pulling away emotionally, the late nights, the distance. I didn't want to see it then, but now I couldn't avoid it. I thought we were fine. I thought we were happy. I thought we were building something together. But Isabelle had already started planning her exit long before she actually walked away. The last email she sent after our final argument echoed in my mind. "We need to talk. I don't think we're happy anymore." That was the moment I should have known. But I didn't. I couldn't. Now, sitting alone in this house, I couldn't escape the feeling of failure. It had been right in front of me the whole time, and I had missed it. I had failed her, and I had failed us. The sound of my phone buzzing broke my thoughts. It was a notification from Isabelle's social media. I opened it without thinking, my heart already sinking. There it was, a post of her and a man I didn't recognize. She was smiling, her arm wrapped around his waist, his face pressed against hers. The caption was simple, feeling lucky. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at the picture, unable to look away. The man in the photo was someone from her work. I remembered her mentioning him a few times before. She had always said he was a good guy, that he was charming, easy to talk to. My stomach twisted. Was this why she had been pulling away? Was he the reason she had stopped loving me? The realization hit me hard. She had moved on. She had already found someone else, and she had done it so quickly, so easily. I felt a sharp pang in my chest. The betrayal was like a slap to my face. How could she? How could she move on like that, so quickly, without a second thought? My mind raced. Was this the man she'd been seeing before the divorce? Had I been the fool all along? I didn't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen, but when I finally looked up, the tears were already streaming down my face. I wiped them away, but the feeling of betrayal still lingered. I needed to talk to someone. Nathan was my best friend, and I knew he'd tell me the truth, even if it was painful. I grabbed my phone and called him, my hands shaking. He picked up after a few rings. "Hey man, what's up?" His voice was warm, but there was something distant about it. I don't know, Nathan. I saw the picture. Isabelle's with someone else. She's moved on already." My voice cracked as I spoke. "Jesus, Bradley, I'm sorry, man. I know it hurts. But have you really thought about it? Have you really thought about whether you were the husband she needed?" His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I sat down on the couch, feeling suddenly smaller, more vulnerable. I hadn't thought about it. I hadn't even considered the possibility that I hadn't been enough for her. But now, hearing Nathan's words, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had failed her in ways I hadn't even realized. "I don't know what to do anymore, Nathan. I need answers. I need to know why she left." My voice was thick with emotion. "I get it, man. But I think you need to ask yourself if you were the husband she needed, too. It's not just about what she did, it's about what you did, too." I wasn't sure if I was ready to face it, but I knew he was right. I had to confront Isabelle. I had to understand why she left. I couldn't move on until I did. I took a deep breath and picked up my phone. I dialed Isabelle's number, my heart pounding in my chest. The phone rang for a few moments before she picked up. "Hello?" Her voice was cold, distant. "I saw the picture, Isabelle," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to know what happened." There was a long pause before she answered, her voice flat. "We were already over long before the divorce was finalized. You just didn't see it." Her words cut through me, colder than anything I had ever heard. I felt the blood drain from my face. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she be so indifferent? How could she be so cold? "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice breaking. She sighed. "I don't have to explain myself to you, Bradley. We were done. You just didn't see it." I could feel the weight of her words crushing me, but at the same time, I knew I needed to let it go. She had already moved on. And now, I had to move on too. I sat on my couch that morning, the phone in my hand heavier than it should have been. The message from Isabelle's new partner was still there, waiting for me to decide. It felt like the kind of moment where you could either turn away and pretend it never existed, or face it head on, knowing full well that it would change everything. I thought about ignoring it, but the truth was, I couldn't. There were too many unanswered questions swirling in my mind. My thoughts drifted back to all the times Isabelle had talked about her friends, about the way they always saw us this perfect couple, how they admired our relationship, how we were the golden couple. I used to believe it too, but now that image felt so distant, so warped by everything that had happened. It was like I was a character in my own life story, watching it unfold, but unable to control the plot. I stared at the screen again. The message was clear. Let's meet. I'd like to talk. It's important for you to know everything. The invitation wasn't just an offer. It was a summons, a pull towards something I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But the curiosity gnawed at me. I had to know. I was tired of living in the unknown. Maybe this would bring some closure. Maybe it would just bring more pain. Either way, I needed to find out. But as I hovered over the accept button, a moment of clarity hit me. Was I looking for peace, or was I just chasing after more wounds to add to the pile? Would confronting him give me closure, or simply make everything more complicated? I hesitated. My heart was telling me to run, to protect myself from whatever lay ahead. But my mind, the part of me that had always tried to make sense of things, knew I had to face this. Isabelle had moved on, and now it was time for me to do the same, even if it meant walking into a situation that would be as uncomfortable as it was necessary. With a deep breath, I hit the reply button. I'll meet you. The cafe was bustling when I arrived, the low hum of conversations mixing with the clinking of coffee cups. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but when I saw him walk in, I immediately knew John, Isabelle's new partner. He had that kind of easy confidence that I used to have, back when I was still the man she admired. He walked in like he owned the place, and for a moment I was frozen in place, unsure of how to react. He looked nothing like me. Taller, broader, with a kind of casual elegance I couldn't quite place. He wasn't the kind of guy I would have imagined Isabelle ending up with. But there he was. He saw me immediately, his expression lighting up with that familiar charm. He was smiling, a kind of knowing smile. The smile that told me he was comfortable in his own skin, comfortable with the fact that he was now the one who shared a life with Isabelle. Bradley, right? His voice was smooth, casual, as if we were just two people meeting for the first time. I nodded, forcing a smile. We shook hands. His grip was firm, his eyes meeting mine with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. I hated how easily he wore it, how comfortable he seemed in this space that I thought was still mine. We sat down, and I tried my best to keep it together. My thoughts were racing, but I focused on his words, on the way he was talking about Isabelle, like he knew her, in a way I never would again. She's really happy, you know, he said, as he stirred his coffee, his eyes never leaving me. It was quick for her, but I guess when you find someone you click with, well, it doesn't take long, does it? I swallowed hard. It wasn't just the words, it was the way he said it, the casualness, the utter lack of remorse. Isabelle had moved on so quickly, so seamlessly, and here I was, struggling to even breathe in the same room as him. Anger surged in my chest, but I swallowed it. I couldn't show it. Not now. Not in front of him. Yeah, I said, my voice a little rougher than I intended. She's always been that way. Gets what she wants. John laughed softly. Yeah, she's a pretty strong woman. But you know, we've connected. It feels right. I forced myself to nod, even though inside everything felt like it was cracking. I wanted to scream, to throw something at him, to tell him how much he had taken from me. But I stayed quiet. It wasn't his fault. Not really. It was Isabelle's choice, her decision to leave me for him. She moved on quickly, huh? I asked, trying to sound casual, even though I could feel the heat rising in my face. He didn't even flinch. Yeah, I guess so. But you know, sometimes you just know. You find someone who gets you, and it's easy. It just happens. I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped me. Easy, I muttered under my breath, but he heard me. You don't have to agree with it, he said, his tone shifting slightly. But that's how it is. We're both happy. For the first time, I felt something close to rage bubbling up, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I asked, how long have you two been seeing each other? He paused for a moment, his smile faltering just a fraction, before he leaned forward. Longer than you think, he said. We've been in touch for a while now, before the divorce. My stomach dropped. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Before the divorce? My mind spun. This wasn't just a quick rebound. This had been going on while I was still trying to save our marriage. I had no idea. I had been living in a lie, blind to the fact that Isabelle had already moved on before she ever told me it was over. I walked back to my apartment later that afternoon, my head heavy with everything John had said. I couldn't stop thinking about how casually he'd dropped the bombshell about his and Isabelle's relationship. How could she have done that? How could she have been so dishonest with me? How much of our marriage had been a lie? When I got home, I sat down on the couch, my mind racing. I felt sick, betrayed. I couldn't escape the truth, no matter how much I tried to. Isabelle had been gone long before the divorce papers were even signed. I needed to talk to her. I had to. But what would it accomplish? Would it give me closure, or would it just make everything worse? I wasn't sure I could handle another one of her cold responses. She'd already made it clear she didn't care about me anymore. But still, I couldn't ignore the question that kept running through my mind. Did she ever really love me? I knew I had to confront her, but did I have the strength to hear the truth? Just as I was starting to spiral, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Isabelle. "We need to talk about something I never told you. It's time you knew everything." My heart sank. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. What else could she possibly say? The night after I received Isabelle's text, I sat in my apartment, phone still in hand. I could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on me. It was as if I were standing at the edge of something, not knowing whether I should jump or step back. My mind was a battlefield. Should I face Isabelle and confront her about the mess she had left in our lives? Or should I walk away and let the past stay buried? I glanced at her message again. "We need to talk about something I never told you. It's time you knew everything." The simplicity of it felt like a slap in the face. It was direct, almost too direct. There was no pretense, no softness, just the cold truth that she had more to say, more secrets to reveal. And I had to face them. I tried. To remember the final days of our marriage, the way things had spiraled out of control. Isabelle had made it clear that she was unhappy, but there had been so many signs I had ignored. The late nights, her growing emotional distance, the constant tension between us. I never thought much of it until it was too late. Now, she had moved on, and I was left behind, still piecing together the puzzle of our broken marriage. I had to meet her. I had to hear what she had to say, even if it hurt. I wasn't sure what I was hoping for. Maybe some form of closure, maybe an apology. But deep down, I knew that whatever she told me wouldn't change the fact that she had already made her choice. I had to accept that, but first, I needed to understand why. I dialed her number, the weight of the phone in my hand reminding me how much I had lost. When she picked up, her voice was cool, but there was something else in it, a kind of hesitation, maybe even regret. "Bradley," she said, her voice soft, "I'm glad you agreed to meet." I arrived at the cafe early, my nerves getting the better of me. The place was quiet, a few patrons scattered around, absorbed in their own conversations. I took a seat at a corner table, tapping my fingers nervously on the surface. My mind kept racing, going over every possible scenario of what could happen in this conversation. When Isabelle walked in, she looked different, colder, more composed than I remembered. She was wearing a simple dress, nothing extravagant, but it suited her perfectly. She looked at me and gave a small, awkward smile before sitting down. The space between us felt thick with unspoken words. We both knew why we were here, but neither of us seemed ready to start the conversation. She opened her mouth, her words coming out slowly. "I've been thinking a lot, Bradley, about everything, about us." I nodded, my throat tight. "You should have thought about it before you left." Isabelle didn't flinch. "I didn't leave, Bradley. I tried to make it work. You didn't see how unhappy I was. You didn't notice the distance between us. It wasn't just about me, there was no us anymore. I had to do something about it." I clenched my fists under the table, fighting to keep my composure. I wanted to scream at her, tell her how much she had hurt me, how I felt betrayed. But I knew that wouldn't help. It wouldn't bring us back, and it wouldn't make this pain go away. You married him, Isabelle, so quickly. After everything we shared, you moved on so fast. Was I that easy to replace? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes softened for a second, but then they hardened again. But when John came into my life, things changed. I wasn't happy with you anymore. I felt invisible. I felt my heart sink. Invisible? I gave everything for us, for this family, and you chose him. I didn't choose him because of you, Bradley, she said, her voice barely audible now. I chose him because he made me feel seen, something I hadn't felt in years. As the conversation continued, the tension only grew. Isabelle explained that her relationship with John had progressed quickly, but she was careful with her words. She said they'd connected on a deeper level, something she had never felt with me. I didn't want to hear it, but I had to. It felt like a dagger to my chest every time she spoke, but I had to understand. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Isabelle dropped the bombshell. John and we started talking before the divorce. Long before you knew, we were close, Bradley. I had been emotionally checked out for months, maybe even longer. My breath caught in my throat. I felt the room close in on me, my pulse pounding in my ears. Everything I had believed, every moment I had cherished, was a lie. She had already been with him while we were still married. While I was fighting for us, she had already checked out. It made me question everything about our marriage. Was I just someone to pass the time until she found someone else? I fought to keep my cool, but my anger was rising. You were already planning this, weren't you? I asked, my voice hoarse. You were already gone long before you told me it was over. Isabelle looked at me, her expression soft but firm. I never meant for things to end like this, Bradley. I never wanted to hurt you. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. I can't do this anymore. I can't keep pretending. We're not going to fix this, Isabelle. We never were. As I turned to leave, Isabelle's voice stopped me. Wait, she called out, her tone pleading. There's more. There's something else I need to tell you. Something that changes everything. I stopped in my tracks, my heart racing. What more could there possibly be? The morning after the conversation with Isabelle, I found myself pacing my apartment, running the same thoughts over and over in my head. I had made the decision to meet John. There was no backing out now. The invitation from Isabelle had been the final push. She had already moved on, and now so had he. The man who had been a part of our lives, a friend in the circles Isabelle and I shared, was now taking my place. I couldn't pretend that I wasn't torn, but I knew deep down that if I didn't face him, I would never get the closure I so desperately needed. I hadn't heard from Isabelle since that night, but the text message she had sent me kept echoing in my mind. We need to talk about something I never told you. It's time you knew everything. Was there more to her words, something deeper? Or was this just the last part of her apology before she moved forward with her new life? Either way, I had to hear it for myself. No more wondering, no more uncertainty. I had to meet him. I had to face the man who had taken everything from me. My marriage, my future. Sitting on my couch, I glanced at my phone, my finger hovering over the message I had drafted for John. We need to talk. Simple, to the point, no room for misunderstandings. I hit send, and the message was out there, hanging in the air between us. There was no turning back now. The hours dragged on. My stomach churned with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. Would he admit everything, or would he lie and try to cover up the truth? It didn't matter. I had to hear it from him. I had to know just how deep this betrayal went. By the time the sun started to set, I had steeled myself. The decision had been made. I couldn't run anymore. I wasn't going to pretend that everything would be okay. My life was in pieces, and I needed to face it head on. I stood outside John's house, the cold evening air biting at my skin. I couldn't remember the last time I felt so out of place, like I didn't belong in the world I had spent so many years building. The house in front of me, once a symbol of a shared life with Isabelle, now felt like a foreign land. I had crossed into enemy territory, and for a brief moment, I wondered if I was making a mistake. The door opened, and there he stood. John. He was taller than me, a little more muscular, with a confident air about him that instantly made me feel small. He greeted me with a smile, almost like we were old friends. "Bradley," he said, his voice smooth and calm. "Didn't think you'd actually come." I nodded, not sure what to say. I was here for one reason only, to get answers. Nothing more, nothing less. "Can we talk?" I asked, already knowing that this conversation would be far from easy. We sat down, and the tension between us was palpable. There was no warmth in the room, no friendliness. Just two men who had once known each other, now sitting across from each other in a room full of resentment and broken trust. The silence stretched on for a few seconds before John spoke again. "I didn't think you'd come, but I guess I should have expected this. Isabelle said you might want to talk." I leaned forward, staring at him. "Did you always plan to take Isabelle from me?" He seemed unfazed by the question. Instead of looking guilty, he shrugged. "I never intended to hurt you, Bradley. But Isabelle and we've had something for a long time. It wasn't just about you or me, it was about love. It always was." His words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Love? He was talking about love? A part of me wanted to scream, to throw my chair at him, to make him feel the rage that was building inside me. But I stayed silent, trying to hold on to some semblance of control. "You think this is love?" I shot back. "Is that what you call it? You were in my life, in our life, and you just—" "Things weren't right, Bradley," he interrupted, his tone calm, almost dismissive. "Isabelle was unhappy, and I was there for her when she needed someone. We connected. She needed me, and I needed her. I didn't take her from you. You just what?" I cut him off. "You just waited for the perfect moment to make your move. You couldn't just leave us alone, could you? You had to step in." John's eyes flickered with something, maybe guilt, maybe something else. But he didn't apologize. "I didn't want to hurt you. I never did. But you have to understand, Isabelle and there was always something there. We just didn't act on it until after the divorce." I could feel my blood boiling. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I was losing control. This wasn't how I imagined the conversation going. But the more he spoke, the more I realized how deeply I had been deceived. How long had they been in contact? How long had they been planning this? I leaned back, the weight of his words sinking in. "So, you've been planning this for months? You've been planning to take her all along?" John's face softened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of something that almost resembled regret. It wasn't like that. It just happened. But when she told me she wanted a divorce, I knew. I knew we had a future together. I stared at him, speechless, as everything I thought I knew about my life and marriage unraveled before me. This wasn't just an affair. This was calculated, cold. He had known what he was doing the entire time, and Isabelle had let him. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in on me. I was so full of anger, so full of disbelief, that I didn't know how to process everything he was saying. He had taken something precious from me, and now he was sitting there, acting as if he had every right to do so. The longer the conversation went on, the more I realized that I wasn't angry with John. I was angry with myself, for not seeing it sooner, for not recognizing the signs, for allowing myself to stay in a marriage that had been falling apart long before I was willing to admit it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stood up. My legs felt weak, but I was determined. "I'm done," I said, my voice firm but quiet. "You've made your choices, and I'm done pretending. I'm not going to waste any more of my life on this. Not on you, not on her. I turned to walk out, but as I reached the door, I heard John's voice, low and pleading. Bradley, you don't understand. She never really loved you. I stopped in my tracks, the words hitting me harder than anything else he had said. I turned back around, my eyes cold, my face set in determination. You're wrong, I said, my voice steady. She loved me, but you made her believe she didn't. I woke up to the sound of silence, the kind that makes you acutely aware of just how empty a place can feel. My apartment, once filled with the bustle of conversations and plans, now sat still, like a house that had given up on everything. I dragged myself out of bed and sat at the edge, staring at the walls that held the remnants of a life I used to know. It wasn't the first time I had felt this way, but it was different now. The anger I'd been carrying had finally started to wear thin, leaving something that felt almost worse: emptiness. The confrontation with John had given me the answers I needed, but it also left me with more questions. Not about him or Isabelle, those answers had been painful enough, but about myself. Was I truly so blind? Had I really been so caught up in the routine of life that I couldn't see the cracks forming all around me? The questions echoed in my mind, and with each one, the weight of the past few years pressed harder on my chest. But somewhere under that weight, something stirred, a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild. I thought back to the advice Sarah had given me just a few days ago. You can't keep holding on to the past if you want to build something new. It was the first thing she had said that had actually made sense to me. The past was gone, Isabelle was gone, and John, he had taken more than just her, he had taken my sense of self. But it wasn't too late to get it back. I could still move forward. I wasn't going to waste any more time looking backward. I spent the next few hours in a kind of daze, cleaning up my apartment, clearing out the emotional clutter that had built up over the years. I opened drawers and found old pictures of Isabelle and me, vacation snapshots, anniversary cards, our old love letters. I tossed them in the trash without a second thought. It hurt, sure, but I needed to do this. I needed to let go, even if it meant severing ties with the past completely. By the time the sun began to set, I was exhausted, but there was a strange sense of clarity. I could breathe again. It wasn't easy. It never would be, but I was ready to move on. A week later, I sat in a small coffee shop with Sarah. She had been a friend of mine years ago, back when life was simpler. She had known Isabelle too, and she had been one of the few people who had offered me support after the divorce. Sarah looked at me with concern in her eyes as she took a sip of her coffee. You've been through so much, Bradley. I can't believe how much you've had to handle all at once. I shrugged. It's been rough, but I'm getting through it. She smiled faintly. Getting through it is a start. I looked down at my hands, unsure of what to say next. She was the first person who hadn't judged me, the first person who hadn't told me to get over it or move on. She understood that it wasn't that simple. She knew that moving on meant more than just letting go of someone, it meant reclaiming yourself. I remember when I went through my own heartbreak, she said, her voice gentle. It felt like I was going to drown in it. But one day, I woke up and realized that I had a choice. I could either stay stuck, or I could choose to live my life again. Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I realized that I had been stuck. Stuck in anger, stuck in pain, stuck in a life that was no longer mine. Sarah had found a way to move past her own betrayal. Maybe I could too. How did you do it? I asked, genuinely curious. Sarah laughed softly. It wasn't easy, but I had to start with the basics, focusing on myself, on my career, on what made me happy. I stopped trying to fix things that were broken, and instead, I started working on the things I could control. Her story resonated with me in a way I hadn't expected. She wasn't telling me to forget everything or to forgive Isabelle and John. She was telling me to start over, to rebuild what had been lost, but on my own terms. A few days later, I found myself sitting at my desk at work, something I hadn't felt like doing in months. But today was different. Today, I was ready to take action. The pile of papers in front of me didn't seem so overwhelming anymore. I had been avoiding a major project for too long, but now I was ready to tackle it. I had been putting this off, thinking that my life was too broken to focus on work. But that had changed. I had changed. As I started to organize my thoughts, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Bradley, this is Mark from company name. We spoke a while ago about a potential project. I wanted to touch base about moving forward." I paused. Mark was someone I'd met months ago at a conference. He had mentioned a big project that had the potential to take my career in a whole new direction. It was the kind of opportunity I had always wanted, but I had been too consumed by everything else to even think about it. I quickly dialed the number, and a few moments later, I was on the phone with Mark, discussing details I hadn't even considered before. The project was huge, and it could change everything for me. The excitement I felt was like a spark in a dry field. As the call ended, I leaned back in my chair, feeling a mix of emotions: excitement, surprise, and fear. This was my chance to turn everything around, to build something new. But then, as if fate were toying with me, Mark dropped a bombshell. "By the way, Isabelle's name came up in the meeting. She's working with us now on a side project." My stomach dropped. I knew I couldn't avoid her forever, but hearing her name again, so soon, was like a punch to the gut. I had a decision to make. Was I ready to face her again, even if it meant stepping into a world I had tried to leave behind? Or would I keep moving forward, regardless of what she did? The call ended, and I was left sitting in silence, unsure of what the future held, but feeling more motivated than ever to take the next step, whatever it might be. The following week, I made a decision. It was time to confront Isabelle, to finally put everything out on the table, to clear the air. I couldn't keep running. I needed closure, and the only way to get it was to face her, once and for all. We met at a park, a neutral spot, a place where we could talk without the pressure of old memories clouding everything. The conversation started off awkwardly, with small talk. But soon enough, the tension between us became too much to ignore. Isabelle confessed that she had been struggling with guilt since the divorce. She admitted that the affair wasn't as simple as she had made it seem before. She said she had never meant to hurt me, but for me, it was too little, too late. "I don't think we can be friends again, Isabelle," I said, my voice steady but final. "I've already forgiven you, but I'm moving forward. I can't keep looking back." She looked at me, her eyes sad but understanding. "I get it. I'm sorry, Bradley. I really am." I turned to walk away, knowing I had made the right decision. The past was behind me, and I wasn't going to let it pull me down any longer. I woke up with a tightness in my chest, the kind that usually comes when you've been avoiding the inevitable. The silence in my apartment felt louder this morning, as if the world outside had been waiting for me to make a decision. The days following the conversation with Isabelle had been a blur. I thought I was making progress, but in the quiet of the morning, doubt crept in. Was I really moving forward, or was I just running away from everything I had to face? The weight of what had happened pressed down on me. I hadn't allowed myself to feel much since the confrontation, just a numb sense of everything breaking apart, yet somehow holding together. Today, though, was different. Today, I knew I couldn't keep running. I stood up from my bed, my feet hitting the cold floor, grounding me in the present. I wasn't going to be paralyzed by my past anymore. The message from Isabelle had been a final wake-up call, and I knew I had to face my fears head-on. I had to confront the uncertainty, not just about her, but about myself, about a future. I couldn't keep avoiding these conversations, and I couldn't keep holding on to something that had already slipped away. I picked up my phone, fingers trembling slightly as I unlocked it. The message from Isabelle still stared back at me. "We need to talk." It wasn't the first time she'd reached out, but this time felt different. The thought of meeting her again stirred something in me. I could feel the anger bubbling up, mixed with something deeper, a sense of abandonment, a sense of loss. But I also felt a pull, a desire to face her, to hear the words that might finally give me the clarity I needed. I took a deep breath and typed back, "We can meet today. Let's clear the air once and for all." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. There was no turning back now. I walked into the cafe where we had agreed to meet. The early afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over everything. But even in the warmth, I felt cold. Isabelle was sitting in a corner booth, her back straight, her hands folded on the table. She looked the same, still beautiful, still composed, but everything about her felt distant now. She looked up as I approached, her eyes betraying a flicker of emotion before she masked it with a neutral expression. "Bradley," she said quietly. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from her, the silence between us hanging thick. She opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. "Why, Isabelle?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. "Why did you do this? Why him? Why now?" Isabelle sighed, her eyes dropping to the table. "I never meant to hurt you," she began, her voice soft but firm. "I struggled with this for a long time, and I kept telling myself that I was doing the right thing. But in the end, I couldn't keep pretending. I wasn't sure what I expected, but it wasn't this. I had prepared myself for the harsh words, the final closure. But her guilt didn't feel like a justification. They felt like an excuse. "You think I don't understand?" I couldn't keep the frustration out of my voice. "You think I don't know what happened?" Isabelle didn't answer right away. She looked at me, searching my face as though she were trying to figure out if I really knew, if I really understood. Finally she spoke, almost in a whisper. "It wasn't about him, Bradley. It was about me. I didn't feel seen anymore. Not by you, not by anyone." I sat back in my chair, the weight of her words sinking in. It wasn't about John. It was about something deeper. A betrayal that had been building long before I knew. "Isabelle," I said, my voice more calm than I felt, "I don't want your apology. I don't need it." The words felt like a release. "But what I do need is for you to leave me out of your mess. I've moved on. I'm done trying to fix something that was broken long before I knew it." She stared at me for a moment, her face pale, as if she hadn't expected such a response. "I didn't want to hurt you, Bradley. You have to believe me." I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. "You already have," I said quietly. "But I'm done. You can keep your guilt, Isabelle. I don't need it." As I turned to walk away, Isabelle called after me. "Bradley, wait. There's something else I need to tell you." I froze in place, my heart pounding in my chest. What else could there possibly be? I turned slowly to face her. She looked down at her hands, then back up at me. "I'm pregnant," she said, her voice breaking. And you might be the father." The words hit me like a truck. I felt my blood run cold. This wasn't how I thought this conversation would go. I didn't know how to process it. For a moment, the world stopped spinning. Isabelle, pregnant. And with my child? I don't know what to say, I stammered, fighting to keep my fine composure. She stood up too, her face pale, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and sorrow. "I know this isn't the way you wanted to hear it, but I couldn't keep it from you any longer." I couldn't breathe. I turned and walked out of the cafe, the air suddenly thick with a tension I couldn't escape. I needed answers. I needed time to think. But everything had just changed again. That night, I couldn't sleep. The image of Isabelle's face, her revelation, kept playing over and over in my mind. The confusion, the anger, the helplessness, it all swirled inside me until I didn't know what was real anymore. I grabbed my phone and stared at it. Another call from Isabelle? Or a message from John? Then, an unexpected ring broke my thoughts. It was my lawyer, and it wasn't good news. "Bradley, Isabelle's initiated legal action for child support," he said, his voice stern but sympathetic. You'll need to take this seriously. I closed my eyes. The world was spinning again. Now, I had more than just my feelings to think about. There were responsibilities, consequences. What was I supposed to do now? A few days later, I decided to clear my head. I packed a bag and drove to the one place I knew would give me the space to think my childhood park. The place where I had spent hours dreaming of a future that seemed so simple then. It was early morning when I arrived, and the park was quiet. I walked through the familiar paths, letting the stillness fill me. I needed answers. I needed clarity. That's when I saw him. My old mentor, Tom, was sitting on a bench, watching the ducks glide across the pond. I hadn't seen him in years, but I recognized him immediately. He stood up when he saw me, smiling warmly. "Bradley," he said, his voice deep and steady. "It's been a long time." "I didn't expect to see you here," I said, a bit surprised but also comforted by the familiar face. Tom chuckled. "This place has a way of pulling people back." We sat on the bench, and I told him everything. He listened carefully, never interrupting. And when I was done, he spoke in the same calm tone I remembered from my youth. "Bradley," he said, "you've been through a lot, but the most important thing you can do now is listen to your gut. Don't make decisions based on what others expect from you. Focus on your own path. It's your life to live." His words resonated with me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. It was time to make a decision. I stood up, turning to face the park once more. "Thanks, Tom. I think I know what I need to do." Later that day, I sat down at my desk. Isabelle's name flashed across the screen. I was about to respond, but I stopped myself. This time, I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was in control. I had made my decision. I woke up that morning with a heavy feeling in my chest, a sense of dread I couldn't shake. The last few days had been an emotional roller coaster. After the phone call from Isabelle, everything felt uncertain, like the ground beneath me was shifting. I wasn't sure if I was moving forward or just pretending to. But today, I knew. Today, I would finally take control. My phone buzzed, breaking my thoughts. I picked it up, staring at the screen. A message from an unknown number. I had a sinking feeling as I tapped it open. It was Isabelle. "Can we talk?" I need to explain. One last time. I read the words over and over. The familiar pang of anger and confusion rose within me. But so did something else, a strange sense of resolve. It was time. Time to confront everything. To stop letting the past dictate my future. I couldn't keep running. I had been doing that for too long. Just as I was steeling myself for what was to come, my doorbell rang. I didn't expect anyone, but I opened it anyway. Standing there was Nathan, my closest friend. "Bradley," he said, looking at me with a knowing gaze. "You've been avoiding this, haven't you?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I'm not sure I'm ready, Nathan. I don't know if I can face her again." "You've been ready," he said firmly. "You've been carrying this weight for far too long. You need to face it, Bradley. For your own peace. If you don't, she's going to keep dragging you back into this mess." His words hit me like a ton of bricks. He was right. I couldn't keep letting Isabelle control the narrative. I had to take the reins now. I looked at him and nodded. "You're right. I have to do this." Nathan clapped me on the back. "Go get your life back, man." I didn't waste another second. I grabbed my keys, walked out the door, and headed straight for Isabelle's house. There was no turning back now. When I arrived at Isabelle's house, I could feel the weight of every decision we'd ever made. The air felt thick with the tension of everything left unsaid. Isabelle stood in the doorway, her face a mask of surprise and something else, guilt maybe. She didn't expect me to show up unannounced, but I wasn't here for pleasantries. "Bradley," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "I didn't think you'd come." "I'm done waiting for answers, Isabelle," I said, my voice calm but firm. I'm done letting you control the situation. She looked taken aback by my words, but I wasn't about to back down. This was my life now, and I was no longer going to let her pull the strings. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said, her voice shaking. I've been struggling with guilt. I didn't want it to happen like this. You think I don't know that? I snapped, the anger rising inside me. You've been using me, Isabelle. Using our past to justify your own insecurities, your own selfishness. Her eyes widened. Bradley, that's not what I meant. No, I interrupted. Stepping closer, you've been lying to me, to both of us, and I won't stand here and listen to any more of it. You made your choices, and now I'm making mine. She opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand to stop her. I'm done. I don't need your apologies, and I don't need your guilt. I've moved on, Isabelle. It's time for you to do the same. The words hung in the air between us, but before she could say anything else, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. My stomach dropped. Bradley, he said urgently, I've just received some new information regarding the custody case. It's big. You need to meet me tomorrow. I could hear Isabelle's voice in the background, but I couldn't focus on her anymore. The realization hit me, my fight wasn't over. And now I had something more to fight for. Thanks, I muttered, hanging up the phone. I turned to Isabelle, meeting her gaze with a steady calm. Goodbye, Isabelle, I said. And don't call me again. I stepped outside into the evening air, the weight of everything pressing down on me. My mind raced, the events of the last few days spinning in my head. But now, with the phone call from my lawyer, something had shifted. I was no longer the man on the edge of losing everything. I was ready to fight. The news about Isabelle and the custody case changed everything. I could no longer afford to let her manipulate me. She had been using our past to paint a picture of a broken relationship, but now I had the chance to rewrite that narrative. I stood still for a moment, feeling the weight of my decision. Then I pulled out my phone again and dialed my lawyer. We need to meet first thing tomorrow, I said, my voice calm and resolute. I'm ready to fight. As I hung up, I took a deep breath. The battle was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. The next morning, I walked into my office with a renewed sense of purpose. I sat at my desk, the familiar surroundings grounding me. I had a decision to make, one that would shape my future, but I was no longer lost. I had spent so much time trying to find closure, but what I really needed was to fight for my own happiness, my peace of mind. Isabelle's hold on me had been broken, and now it was time to stand firm in my own life. I picked up the phone again. This time, it wasn't about Isabelle, it was about me. The apartment felt colder than usual. The air hung heavy, thick with unresolved emotions. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Isabelle and I once sat for dinners, talking about our dreams, our future. Now, it was just a reminder of everything that had unraveled. I couldn't stop thinking about the confrontation. Isabelle's words echoed in my mind, but something didn't sit right. I wasn't angry anymore, I was confused. I had to know the truth. I wasn't just confronting Isabelle anymore. There was someone else involved, someone I didn't see coming. As I ran my hand through my hair, I felt my phone buzz, cutting through my thoughts. It was a message, but not from Isabelle. The number was unfamiliar, and the message itself was even more shocking. A file. Attached was a folder, labeled simply Evidence. I clicked it open, my heart pounding. As I read through the documents, the world around me started to feel like it was tilting. Isabelle, I realized, was playing a game much bigger than I had ever imagined. She wasn't just manipulating me, she was part of something much darker. The files revealed a series of communications, coded messages, and plans. Someone was orchestrating things from the shadows, using Isabelle as a pawn. The deeper I read, the more my mind raced. This wasn't just a betrayal from her. There was someone else pulling the strings, someone I thought I could trust. I stared at the final piece of the puzzle, a document revealing the true mastermind behind it all. And then, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just Isabelle. It was someone from my own family. Someone close. The weight of that realization crushed me. How could they? Just as I processed this, a knock at my door startled me. My heart skipped a beat. Who could it be at this hour? I stood up, trying to steady my breath as I walked toward the door. The last thing I expected was the figure standing on the other side. "Bradley," the man said, his voice low but familiar. "I need to talk to you." I froze. It was Jason, a former colleague from years ago. What was he doing here? "Jason, what's going on?" I asked, suspicion creeping into my voice. "I've been following the situation, Bradley. I know everything about Isabelle, and I know who's behind it all. You need to hear this." His words barely registered as my mind swirled with everything I had just discovered. But Jason seemed serious, and that caught my attention. He stepped inside, looking over his shoulder as if to make sure no one was watching. "I've been observing from the sidelines for months," he continued. "I have all the information you need. It's not just Isabelle. There's someone else. Someone in your own family. I never thought it would be them, but it's the truth." I felt the floor beneath me shift. My family? No, this had to be a mistake. My own blood? I couldn't process it. Jason handed me a flash drive. "Everything's on here, the final piece of the puzzle." I took the flash drive from him, my hands shaking. "Are you sure? What's going on?" Jason nodded gravely. "They've been manipulating you, Bradley. Your family, Isabelle. They're using you to get what they want. You're not just dealing with betrayal. You're dealing with a bigger game." I felt the bile rise in my throat. My own family? How could they? I couldn't sit still. I needed answers. And fast. Without saying another word to Jason, I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. I had to confront them. I had to find out the truth. Jason's words echoed in my mind as I walked out. "Someone in your family. But who?" I drove straight to my family's house. The air felt thick as I walked up to the door, every step heavier than the last. It was the moment I had been dreading, the moment where the truth would be laid bare. I rang the doorbell, and within seconds, my cousin Luke opened the door. His eyes widened when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" he asked, but I could see the hesitation in his voice. "I know everything, Luke," I said flatly. "I know what you've been doing." Luke's face drained of colour. He stepped back, holding the door a little too tightly, as if he was trying to keep something from spilling out. "You don't understand," he began, but I cut him off. I was done with explanations. "I know you've been involved in this," I said, my voice low but firm. "This game you've been playing using Isabelle, using me, it stops now. Tell me the truth." Luke stood there, silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his words bitter and laced with something I couldn't quite place. "It was never about you, Bradley," he admitted, his eyes avoiding mine. "It's about power, control. You've always had everything handed to you. I couldn't stand it anymore. I wanted what you had, and I was going to take it. Isabelle? She was just a tool. You were just a means to an end." My mind reeled. Betrayal, greed. My family was involved in this mess. And for what? Money, control. I could feel the anger building inside me, but I stayed calm. I had to. "This is over, Luke. I have everything I need to expose you." The confrontation was over, but I still felt a pit in my stomach. My family, my own flesh and blood, had been part of the conspiracy all along. I left their house, numb, and headed straight to my lawyer's office. I had the evidence, the truth, and now I was ready to take action. In the lawyer's office, I felt a sense of resolve that I hadn't felt in days. With the flash drive in hand, the evidence was irrefutable. I could finally make them all pay for what they'd done. I sat down, leaning forward. "Let's do this. Let's expose them all." Just as I thought the storm had finally passed, my phone rang. Isabelle's name flashed on the screen. She wanted to meet one last time. I paused, a sense of finality settling in. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had taken control, and I wouldn't let her manipulate me any longer. I picked up the phone. "I'm done, Isabelle," I said. "We're not talking anymore." The courtroom was quieter than it had ever been. I stood there, in the same suit I had worn countless times, but this time it felt different. This wasn't about professional success or business deals. This was personal. This was my life. The years of betrayal, manipulation, and lies had led me to this very moment. I was here to make my case, not just to the judge, but to myself. The evidence sat in front of me, clear and undeniable. Isabelle and my family members' deceitful actions, the manipulation they had orchestrated, everything was laid bare. But as I stood, ready to make my move, I felt a familiar shift. The tension in the room thickened, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Before I could speak, Isabelle stood up, her voice sharp and pointed. "Your Honor," she began, "this entire case is a farce. My ex-husband, Bradley, is a man who has a history of emotional instability. He's seeking revenge, not justice." I clenched my fists at my sides, fighting the urge to let my emotions take over. I had heard it all before: the accusations, the blame, the false narratives. But this time, it didn't rattle me. Not today. I didn't come to fight her words. I came to fight the truth. My lawyer, calm as ever, turned to me for a nod of approval. I gave it. "Your Honor," I said, standing tall, "I'm here today to seek justice, not vengeance. The truth speaks for itself." I placed the first file in front of the judge, confident in the facts I was about to present. Isabelle's accusations, her character assassination, they were nothing more than smoke and mirrors. I had evidence. Evidence that would finally silence the lies. The courtroom was silent as I methodically went through the documents. Each page revealed another layer of manipulation, another moment of betrayal. Isabelle's lies, my family's lies, spilled out for all to see. When I finished, I glanced at the judge. She was attentive, but I could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. As I finished my presentation, the judge called for a short recess. The weight of it all settled in. The case wasn't over yet. I had said my piece, but the outcome was still uncertain. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. I stayed silent, gathering my thoughts. This moment wasn't about the verdict. It was about reclaiming my life. The afternoon was draining. The case had been intense, and when the judge returned with the verdict, I felt like I had been holding my breath the entire time. Isabelle's betrayal, the family members' manipulation, they had been exposed. But that victory didn't feel as sweet as I had imagined. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Bradley," the judge declared, and a wave of relief washed over me. It was done. The truth had come to light, and justice had been served. But then, just as I was preparing to exhale, my lawyer's phone buzzed. He read the message, and his face fell. "Bradley," he said softly, "this isn't over. Isabelle's planning a countersuit. She's not going down without a fight. We may have won the battle, but the war is still ahead." A chill ran through me. The victory felt hollow. The courtroom had been a battlefield, but I had only won the first round. Isabelle's next move would be just as ruthless. I turned to my lawyer. "Then, let's prepare. I'm not letting her win." Days later, I found myself standing outside my family home. The victory in court had been bitter. My family was the true source of this betrayal, and now it was time to face them. I walked into the house, the weight of everything I had learned heavy on my chest. The family member who had orchestrated it all was sitting in the living room, his face a mask of indifference. "You don't get it, do you, Bradley?" he said, trying to justify his actions. "I was trying to protect the family legacy. You were too naive to understand the bigger picture." This was about power, about ensuring our future. I wanted to scream, to throw every ounce of anger I had in his face, but I didn't. I stood tall, my voice steady. "No, you weren't trying to protect anything. You were trying to control me. You used Isabelle, you used me. But you've lost. I'm done. The silence that followed was deafening. For a moment, I could see the vulnerability in his eyes, but it was too late. The damage had been done. "I'm leaving," I said, turning on my heel, "and I'm never coming back." The weight lifted as I closed the door behind me. My family was gone from my life, and with them, the chains that had bound me. I had done it. I had freed myself. A few weeks passed. I found a new place, an apartment of my own. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that meant everything. As I unpacked the last of my boxes, my phone buzzed. Isabelle. She had sent a letter, a long apology for everything. She begged me to meet, to talk. I sat down on the couch, the weight of the letter in my hands. I didn't know what I felt. Part of me was still angry. Part of me wanted to forgive, to find peace. But then, as I opened the letter, my phone buzzed again. A new message. I paused before reading it. What was it now? Would this be the last message, or just another twist in this endless saga? I opened it slowly. The message, unexpected as it was, left me breathless. It wasn't from Isabelle. It was from someone else entirely.